I think that's true, and I think that's because many of the teachers we have in the world came in a very advanced condition from birth.
Yes.
And maybe had to go through a process, but it was not the whole process. It was not the sort of the generic process that most people have to go through. It was their process. It maybe had to do with, dealing with the pain in their life or their body, and then that was the last thing to go, and you have Eckhart Tolle,
Yes.
Or maybe it's somebody who was doing Zen and went through all of that, and then one day came out of that, and actually, Adyashanti said, I woke up from Zen, but it was a fairly short process of, a process that could be measured in years, not decades necessarily. Yes. So they teach from their experience. Unfortunately, not everybody is in that position to where they can benefit from that particular limited angle that person needed to take to reach enlightenment. Mm-hmm. So what we really need is a systematic approach that covers everyone, no matter where they are on the path, and the ability to gradually bring people along to where they can become ripe also. And incidentally, when people do get to that stage, by using an integrated approach to practices, then they can benefit greatly from these teachers who perhaps don't teach the whole process of cultivation.
Yes.
Maybe they just teach you self-inquiry at the end, or give you that extra push energetically to go over. So it's not like, they don't have it and we do, or vice versa. It's really a matter of everybody getting together, saying, okay, how are we going to take care of everybody? And, let's do that so everybody can get to this stage where they can benefit from that teacher or
now,
that teacher.
In regards to teachers, what do you think happens when the teacher becomes more glamorous to the students than the path itself, infatuated with their teacher?
Yeah, that's an area that has been a big problem, especially, it's probably always been a problem, but it's been sort of ensconced in tradition, in the East especially, where you had a certain type of relationship to the guru, and the guru knew all and was all and never was to be questioned. But it was structured in the society and the culture, so maybe the abuses were less. I don't really know that for sure, but in the West, in the 20th century, we saw a number of teachers become very famous and very adored by their disciples, and in unfortunately most cases misled or abused because of the relationship that evolved there that you mentioned between the student and the teacher being glorified to the point of having no flaws whatsoever.
Yes.
And that's not a good relationship. And I think since the 20th century, or during the 20th century, I think many people have learned about some of the failings of those types of relationships. Not that relationship is totally inappropriate under the right circumstances. Where a teacher is the absolute authority and the student is the absolute, subjugated person, if you will, to have their ego dissolved by the teacher. That's sort of the traditional approach, and it still exists, and it does work to a certain extent. But it doesn't work for everybody, and it certainly doesn't work in the West,
right.
where we want answers. We want to know the truth. We want to know how things work. We want to make it better.
Yes.
Those are really all the impulses that are behind the AYT system. Because I have a scientific background, and I came up through many years of yoga practices, looked across many traditional lines, and I was asking those questions. Well, how are we going to make this better? How come this guy is teaching that, and that guy is teaching that other thing, and how come they never put them together? And so that process, I think we have moved, I hope we're moving beyond the sort of the infatuations of the 20th century into a much more practical approach.
Most spiritual paths say that they are the path. the highest path. Is there a highest path?
Well, I think the path we're doing that works for us
Individually.
better than anything else is our highest path. But it may not be the highest path for somebody else. And I think sectarianism, which is really what you're talking about when you're saying that, oh, well, our path is better than their path.
Yes.
I think that's one of the ills of the spiritual field, if you will. I think all paths are to be respected. I think all paths should communicate with each other, and people should be allowed to modify their paths so that they can find their own highest path. To me, it's very much an individual thing. It's not an institutional thing at all. As soon as you get the institutions involved, you know what happens.
Yes, and what about when the teachings from a particular path says that you need to make a vow to this teacher to be connected for the rest of your life and should take no other teacher? How do you feel about that?
Well, that's the traditional approach from the East, right? I think it has value for people who are in that cultural framework. Mm-hmm. I do, and it's structured in the culture of India, maybe less so now than it used to be because they're becoming more westernized. But I don't think it can be used as a blanket statement or a blanket approach for Westerners simply because Westerners are analytical and Westerners need to explore and pioneer and discover. And that doesn't really work when you're totally dedicated to the will of another person. But I'm not saying it's a bad thing within the cultural context that it was originated from, which obviously did work for somebody. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been there, right? Mm-hmm. I'm being optimistic.
Well, I like what you wrote when you said that it's important, if we want to know the merit of a sage or a teacher, that we should first look at their ordinary relationships rather than their mystical accomplishments.
Yeah, I think that's very true, because it's not that hard. Believe me, I know, because I've been fighting this thing for about 6 years now. It's not that hard to be the perfect guru because people just want you to be that. And what is hard is to be who you really are and, be imperfect. And the truth of the matter is the greatest teachers of all time were very imperfect in certain ways. And that was okay because that was just accepted as part of the gig, if you will. But I think if you really want to know what a person's like, see how they're doing with their wife and their kids and their close friends outside of the public eye. That's definitely true. That's true of anybody, isn't it?